Good afternoon, everybody. It's Tuesday, December 15th. Welcome to the Tiger Club of Kansas City Zoom meeting. Our guest today is Blair Kerkhoff of the Kansas City Star. Of course, Blair's spoken to the club many times, more than 30 years experience at the Star, covering everything from Chiefs, Royals, and is really especially outstanding on college athletics. So Blair, welcome again. We're always great to have you.
Yeah, it's great to be here, and we're starting a few minutes late because of me, because I didn't access until about a minute after noon, and the reason for that was on another Zoom call with our star staff, sports staff, planning the postseason special sections and Chiefs football. So we're talking about Super Bowl sections and how to cover playoffs, how to cover the Super Bowl, and so I apologize for me starting this meeting a few minutes late.
Well, we will have to cut your pay for today's appearance because of that. So,
Again,
again, yeah. So, well, we're always glad to have you. Lots to talk about, of course. Let's talk about Mizzou first. Tigers had a rough outing against Georgia in football, but I think overall we have to look upon Coach Drinkwitz's first season as a success, and also looks like he has a top 20 recruiting class at the side tomorrow.
absolutely. Let me go back to the build up to the Saturday in Columbia last week. Not the We'll get to Saturday, but the days leading up to Saturday when Georgia arrived for the 11 a.m. football game in Illinois for the 7 p.m. basketball game. I remember thinking about a week or so ago that as I was looking at the lists of college football and basketball games that had been postponed and mostly canceled, and just how much sadness there was on college campuses and in the college towns for not having football or basketball games that weekend. And there was one dateline in the country that was really looking forward to Saturday, and that was Columbia, Missouri. And so I was kind of giddy with anticipation for the football and basketball games. But with football, the reason I was kind of excited for it was because what we had just seen, the victory over Arkansas that improved Missouri to 5-3. That if people's outlook or perception of the Tigers hadn't changed by now, it certainly had at that point. I know Eli Drinkwitz had made it a point to say in press conferences that the Tigers had exceeded the over under projection for his team. He saw it as low as two. I was seeing it more 3 and 3.5, and really thinking the Tigers were worthy of 4 or 5 wins. But I think he was able to use that perception to help motivate a team that got to 5 wins or sitting at 5 wins. Now, I also give him props for his post game analysis too, where he all but said that the program has improved and we see the improvement, but they're just not ready to tangle for 60 minutes with Georgia. And you can also include Florida and Alabama in there as well. We've seen that this year. But my gosh, I mean, would any Missouri fan had taken a 5 or 6 and after a bowl game, perhaps a 7 victory season this year, even after the schedule was reduced to 10 regular season games, I would have lined up for that. I'm so impressed with what I'm seeing in the program, the confidence that I see in the program, the leadership I see with Eli Drinkwitz. I'm so impressed with what I'm seeing with what's going on now.
The signing date tomorrow or the early signing dates tomorrow, National Letter Intent Day. Mizzou at this point has a top 20 class. They flipped a wide receiver from East St. Louis last week. Dominic Levet is a 4-star kid. Really looks like a good balanced class. A lot of emphasis on the defensive line, which they need to replenish. But this is, I can't quite remember Mizzou having a recruiting class ranked this high.
No, and we'll see where when it's all said and done, we'll see where the ranking is. But you want, anytime there's a ranking, you want to be part of it, and you want to be ranked as well as you can be. And it seems that's where Missouri is. I have heard the 20 figure but I haven't heard other SEC schools. I just assume there's the usual, half dozen or so that are in the top 20, 25, maybe even more than that, because that's life in the SEC. But in past years, we've typically seen Missouri from anywhere from 35 to 45, it seems to me, or 30 to 45 ish. And I think that's probably reflected in where we've seen Missouri finish in the regular season over the last few years as well. Not at the bottom, not near the top, in the middle, but having to work to be in the middle. Not beating Kentucky, having their lack of success against some other middle of the SEC program. So I think what we're seeing kind of reflects what we heard from Drinkwitz recently when he said, I think it was at his press conference the week of the Georgia game, that Missouri is, the program is doing its part. They're holding up their end of the bargain, and then there was a second part of that, which almost sounded to me like a challenge to the fandom and boosters. They said, "We're doing our part now. You help us do our part, and do your part to help us." And that is, with donations and other forms of support that helps Missouri have the facilities that it takes to be a contender in the SEC, a contender at the top. So I've said it all along, with one or two exceptions. I've liked almost everything I've heard philosophically out of Eli Drinkwitz.
Interesting matchup this weekend to end the season to go to Mississippi State. Mike Leach made a big splash with their first game with LSU, but they're 2-7. But Mizzou is only a 2-point favorite. What I saw in the opening line, it really would be an interesting game, but it would be a nice feather in the cap to end up with a 6-4 regular season.
Absolutely, it would to be over 500. I mean, they're already established right now as the team, tucked in behind Florida and Georgia in the East. They've got distance between them and fourth place. But this would just, it would just a 6-4 season, regular season. I think would be fantastic. And it was Leach's team that kind of exposed LSU right off the bat. Right, there was that season opener, and LSU came in. I think they were ranked 6, coming off the national championship, but had lost so many of its starters from that monster team it had last year, and Mississippi State was competent that night, and a hard team to prepare for in an opening game. Any Leach team is difficult to prepare for because you don't see it all the time. But yeah, the 2-point betting line, I would probably think of it being a little bit more. It should be a little more than that, but I suspect the Tigers will be happy to get out of there with any kind of W, and then on Sunday find out where their bowl destination is going to be.
Yeah. Turning to basketball, obviously Tiger Nation's pretty excited about the 5-0 start. 2 ranked teams. Tigers now ranked 16th in the AP poll. Konzo, I kind of look back, and you've been around a long time, and I've been around a long time. In 1992-93, Missouri finished 7th in the Big 8, but next year they brought back an almost all senior team led by Melvin Booker, and as we know, went undefeated in the conference. I'm not claiming that any way that Missouri's going to go undefeated in the SEC, but I think that veteran presence that the team has, especially in the age of one and done, is really starting to pay some dividends.
Hang on a second, Mark. Let me write this down. Mark Fitzpatrick predicts undefeated. No.
Hold me to that. Yeah.
Hey, look at that 92-93 season. They also won the Big 8 tournament that
they
year.
Did.
So
yes.
They got the bounce into the next year. When I look at this team, we could talk a lot about this team because I am really digging what I'm seeing from this Missouri basketball team. The first thing I think of is my favorite recent Missouri team, and that's the 11-12 team, the last Big 12 Missouri team, the Kim English, Marcus Stedman, Dixon. It was just I love that team. I loved watching that team. I love the confidence with which they played and the swagger that they had, and from a regular season standpoint, that was as fun a college basketball team as I can remember seeing. And listen, this team is shaped differently. It operates differently, but it reminds me in those ways of that team about a decade ago. So there's so much going on with this. They brought everybody back, just about everybody, all but Reed Nico, right? Just about everybody back for this team. But they also, apparently, changed the playing style and the philosophy, and it's more of an attacking team offensively. They get after it. They run. They use their athleticism to get up and down the floor and to score. And I've always thought that what's one thing, it's sort of outside of Conzo Martin's comfort zone. It's not what he did at Tennessee or Cal, but it's what he's doing this season with this team at Missouri, and it's working. It's absolutely working. That Oregon game, I go back to the Oregon game up Omaha, was I'm watching that with almost stunned disbelief that Missouri is taking a good, and favored Oregon team to the basket time and time again. And then Missouri goes into an 0 for 15 streak from the field and doesn't quite lose the lead, and then finds another gear and finishes that game out. So, listen, the Illinois game was just fantastic, and wonderful luck on the coin flip to get that game in Columbia. I'm not sure if it had been any different in Champaign, with no fans in the stands, but it was neat to have it. Contributed to the big day Saturday in Columbia. And then to watch Missouri build the big lead, withstand the Illinois comeback, the great game by the Illinois guard, and pull that thing out in the end. That was very impressive with Mizzou. And I got to tell you, this is the Mizzou basketball that I was hoping to see when they got into the SEC for the next few years. For the entire time they were in the SEC, but certainly when they first got into the SEC, they did have an NCAA tournament season that year, but then it was. After that, it fell apart, and they, just not good at all. But this is what the SEC expected too, with Missouri's basketball tradition. They look like a powerhouse, and a team that maybe only Tennessee you would think would they would be favored in almost every game against SEC opponents except for Tennessee. And I think it's pretty cool that they play the Vols, I think, their first SEC game.
One thing that really has impressed me is the depth of the team. You look at the box score for the Illinois game, Mark Smith and Jeremiah Tillman combined for a total of 8 points, both fouled out, had 7 turnovers between them, and they still beat a top 10 team.
Yeah. I like the depths of the Smiths. I mean, nobody else in the country has 3 Smiths on the team. You know what I liked? Tillman, who's had terrific games this year, did not have a terrific game Saturday night, and they still found a way to win that game. Listen, I always sort of judge Conzo Martin teams on what I think of Tillman, and that's probably not the way to look at it, because I think you're gonna get some good games and some other games where he gets into foul trouble and has to be benched. Well, I guess what I need to conclude is they don't need Tillman to be a 15-8 guy to win. They can win without him or him in foul trouble. But he is, like in the Oregon game, he was so effective. He can play at the basket. He's the type of player not everybody in the SEC or everybody in college basketball has. So when he does stay out of foul trouble, he's a big weapon. But he's not necessary because of that depth that you mentioned. I've never been a big Mitchell Smith fan, but he's shown me some.
I thought he may have been the star of the game the other night.
Yeah, I mean, he has shown me a game that I didn't think he had. And how about depth at different positions for Missouri? Not just they can go 8 or 9 deep. They can go 8 or 9 or 10 deep at different and have value at point, at shooting guard, at power forward, at the big. So there's just a lot to like so far about this Missouri team. I hope we can get enough of the basketball season in that it doesn't seem like a big disruption, or we have to take off a big chunk of January or February because of COVID. But this so far, I think Missouri has been one of the surprise teams in the country so far.
Let's talk about the Chiefs, folks. We're talking to Blair Kerkhoff, Kansas City Star. If you'd like to ask Blair a question, use our chat feature, and we will get to it after our discussion. Blair, the Chiefs. So yesterday I'm out running some errands and had Sports Talk Radio, and This team is 21-1 over the last 400 days, and you would think the sky is falling. Listen to some of these people. Now, again, you'd made a lot of money betting against the Chiefs and taking the points in the last 5 weeks, but they are the best team in the NFL right now. What do they need to cure to be successful in the playoffs?
Well, that's the $1 million question. Or if the problems that we've seen over the last few weeks are the types of problems that'll get them beat in the playoffs against playoff caliber teams. If it wasn't the turnovers, the giveaways as it was against the Dolphins on Sunday, it's the red zone problems that they had against the Broncos the previous week, or the lack of sacks that they've had in several games before Sunday. So there's always something with them. Earlier in the year was Harrison Butker missing extra points, and I don't, they still astonish me that they can have a game in which they give it away 4 times, and we're still in a position when it was when they had given it away 3 times, they were leading 30-10. It was the fourth giveaway. Actually, it did happen when it was 30-10, but that sparked the comeback by Miami. It's just incredible, and we're watching a team. The Patriots obviously were great for 2 decades, and before them, the 49ers had a great run, and the Steelers have had a great run, and the Packers. All these teams have great run. I don't know if any of them have played with a quarterback and an offense as talented, as fun to watch as this one. And that, tell you what, that covers up a lot of issues when you can when you can go down and score almost not at will. That's too easy to say, but they are never ever out of a game. Now you can say that they shouldn't be in some of these games shouldn't be close. They had the big lead at Tampa Bay. They had the big lead after 3 quarters at Miami. They could never seem to put away the Broncos. They haven't covered in each of their last 5 games. So yeah, are these problems that can get them beat in the playoffs? I guess so. But I'm watching the Browns and Ravens last night, and I watch games differently now. I watch them in terms of how teams would match up against the Chiefs. And I'm watching Baker Mayfield, and I'm thinking, yeah, he's having a good game. Do I see him beating Patrick Mahomes in this Chiefs team? No. And we know the Chiefs have the Ravens number. I thought the Dolphins were going to give the Chiefs a really tough game. And in the end, it turns out they did. But those second and third quarters at Miami, the Chiefs boat raced them. I mean, that was just men against boys for a couple of quarters. But they certainly, but Patrick Mahomes had his first quarter from hell, and then the fourth quarter, I think the defense got tired on a 80-degree day. They were on the field all the time, and they faltered a little bit in the fourth quarter. So it's a long-winded way of me saying I don't think it's going to matter who's in front of the Chiefs. And I think when the time comes to play their best football, they're going to play their best football. I think they'll end up being the number 1 seed. They'll play one playoff home game against the Bills, the Ravens, whoever it is. It's not going to matter. And then I think they'll play the AFC Championship game at home, and then off to Tampa in the Super Bowl for, I don't know who you think, the Packers, the Saints. The Rams are a team I kind of like right now. But again, I think we've seen so many flaws with this Chiefs in the last month, month and a half, and they still have beaten, either, playoff quality teams like the Bucks or the Dolphins, or, the Broncos, Panthers, non-playoff quality teams. They find a way to win the games in the end.
Sam Mellinger, your cohort, had an interesting statistic. I think when teams are -3 or more on turnovers, that they win less than 10% of the time. It was something like that. So, and then the Chiefs really should have won by more. Should have put it away, and they were -3. I thought that was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think I heard Curtis Seabold on 810 yesterday say in that situation when team had I think maybe it was a specific 4-1 turnover margin or +3. Those teams in the last 100 games, regular season games, were 99-1. But none of them had Patrick Mahomes.
That's right. And, quote, the worst game of his
Right.
career, maybe. And
Certainly the worst quarter of his
yeah,
career. That was
he still threw for almost 400 yards.
yards.
So let's talk a little about the college football playoff. Right now, Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, Ohio State, A&M probably on the outside looking in. Florida, obviously, because of the shoe incident, is done getting in. But I think the game that intrigues me, Notre Dame Clemson rematch. If Clemson wins, do you think both those teams are still in?
Yeah, I think so. That's the building narrative that that Notre Dame could knock Clemson out of the top four, but a Clemson win, because Notre Dame is second, could just drop Notre Dame to four, and Clemson would basically, they would trade play. Clemson would go to two. Um, so we'll see. To me, the only real question going into the weekend is whether Ohio State deserves to be in the top four, having played right now only 5 regular season games, will not have played 6. We know that Dan Mullen at Florida is really pissed off about the whole thing. I mean, he keeps getting asked about the, you know, his team and the playoff chances, and he's, well, we've played 10. Not everybody's played as many games as we have, and he's talking specifically about Ohio State. So I think the committee has reached a conclusion that Ohio State has done enough and played enough that it deserves to be in the top 4, and we'll know the latest ranking tonight. So the last regular season ranking before the announcement comes on Sunday, and I suspect you'll see the same 4 in order. Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, and then Ohio State. But yeah, listen, some havoc can happen. I don't expect Florida to beat Alabama, but I think the Notre Dame Clemson game is a toss-up, even with Trevor Lawrence playing this time. He didn't play the last time, and I think Ohio State's not going to have any problem with Northwestern. So that's where the drama lies. And who gets in if say Notre Dame beats Clemson? Is it Texas A&M? Is it Cincinnati? Would it be Iowa State if the Cyclones were impressive in beating Oklahoma in the Big 12 title game? I think it would be Texas A&M, and I think they would get crushed by Alabama in a national semifinal game.
You have a vote for the Heisman. Who is it?
Yeah, I do. It's a quarterback. It's either Trevor Lawrence or Mac at Alabama or Justin at Ohio State. It's not been a year for like a big surprise off the pace candidate. There just haven't been enough games for that. But there are some excellent players. The BYU quarterback Wilson's has really had a good season. I just don't think you'll be. I don't think you'll be surprised by any of the finalists this year for the Heisman. One thing that's true is they've moved the ceremony into January. By this would have been this past Saturday, we would have known the Heisman winner. Heck, the conference championships would have been played the first Saturday of the month, and then the Heisman was announced on the second Saturday. And here we are looking at the third Saturday, and Missouri's going to play a regular season football game on the. It's got to be the latest that any school has ever played a regular season football game on December 19th. So yeah, I got to look at it a little more carefully. But in fact, I actually do need to send in a preliminary list of my favorites now, because they do need to invite some people, and they need to get that done. So one thing that's true that we don't always the calendar works, so we can watch the conference championship games and get a good look at who comes up big in those games. It's at least we get that. If Trevor Lawrence throws for 500 yards against Notre Dame, I got to think he'll end up winning the Heisman.
Let's talk about the Royals a little bit. We're talking again with Blair Kerkhoff, Kansas City Star, and you can hear him every Thursday on 8:10 with our friend Seren Petro. I heard you and Seren talk quite a bit last week about the Royals. Some interesting free agent signing, and another thing I want to talk about was John Sherman's ownership, not laying people off, paying the minor leaguers throughout the season. He's really been an exemplary owner in his short term.
He has, and I'll tell you what, in this, 2020, the year of adjustment for everybody on Earth, and for sports included, I don't know of an organization that handled it better than the Royals did in terms of just doing the humanitarian thing by keeping people, keeping administrators on the payroll, keeping minor league players on the payroll. That didn't happen in other organizations. The
Right.
Royals were one of the very few, and it certainly set the example. Others actually ended up following the Royals, that they kept their minor leaguers on the payroll, making just good move after good move. And now we've gotten to the to the hot stove part of baseball, and I love the fact that John Sherman isn't tightening the wallet now. He's to go out and sign Carlos Santana, to go out and get Mike Minor back, and we'll see if Michael Taylor works out as a center fielder. Um, and just yesterday announcing the signing of Greg Holland, who had a great 2020, abbreviated 2020. I think those are all moves that I think they're good moves, and based on what I've heard and seen from others in baseball, they think they're good moves as well. I think what these do is it gives the Royals a chance to get out of a 70 to 75 win season and push them closer to 500, or maybe get them over 500. And if you're over 500, you got a chance, especially if the playoffs expand next year, which there's talk of keeping the expanded playoffs going forward. Heck, I think 500, a little bit over 500, might get you into the playoffs and going forward. So I like the idea of the Royals spending money, going after it a little bit. Not, we've seen three or four straight losing seasons since that sort of in between, after the pennants, and then a couple of 500 years, and then three straight losing seasons. It's time to reverse the course and make them competitive. And I really do like the signing of Santana. That's a guy that just get him out of a Cleveland uniform, because he kills the Royals in a Cleveland uniform.
That's what I was most excited. We won't have to face him again.
Right.
It looks like Michael Taylor, they are counting on him to be a starter in the outfield. He seems to be a bit of a career underachiever, but they see a lot. There's a lot they like in him.
The one thing that Dayton Moore has always preached ever since he's been the general manager is he's going to have an athlete in center field. He's going to have a center fielder who covers a lot of ground because of the space at Kauffman Stadium. And Michael Taylor fits that description. It was David DeJesus actually that convinced Dayton Moore that you had to have a guy with a player with good defensive instincts, but also could cover a lot of ground. And Dayton talks about that it was when you're talking about the center fielder for the Royals, it has to be for reasons other than his bat. And if you look at who they've had over there through the years, it's pretty much been that way. And most famously Lorenzo Cain, playing the position. So so it looks like between Michael Taylor and Franchi Cordero, who will get the first shot, I think, in left field, just going to be a different look around, with Santana at first, and it's definitely a new look to the Royals lineup next year.
You ready for some questions?
Let's do it.
Okay. How do you see the opt out for players working out long term in college?
Well, that's a good question, because it's just going to take some years for the backlog to work itself out. There are just around Kansas City, we're looking at the schools around us that we cover. I bring that up because I use this example. A Missouri born quarterback, Skylar Thompson at Kansas State, that has an opportunity to change the dynamic of the position at Kansas State. He was injured, of course, earlier in the year, but now has an opportunity, his senior year, now has an opportunity to come back, and that could create a logjam at the position. But if you're Kansas State, I think you'd want, if you're looking for success in 2021, you want a player like Skylar Thompson, at quarterback. But does that stunt the development of the freshman who played this year, a kid named Will Howard? So those are decisions that nobody in the history of college sports have had to confront, and all the coaches, all the teams are having to deal with that. It's been made easy for college athletes to transfer, to move around, and now it's been made easy for them to return for a year of competition. It's a good question, and I think as we get closer to into the spring semester, I'm wondering what what families are talking about with their kids, and how they're going to just handle an addition, how schools are going to handle it financially because they remain on scholarship with an incoming class of freshmen there, and it's almost like you could have five classes, 5 or 6 classes depending on whether they redshirted or not, on your football or basketball roster instead of 4 or 5. So a lot of questions still to be answered. It seemed like to me it's the right thing. It doesn't seem like it. It is the right thing to do for all these kids who lost their year and have to play through 2021 season, and those in the spring semester of last year that didn't get to play in the NCAA tournament or any of the spring sports. So I've talked a lot about it, but I don't have any good answer to it. We're going to have to wait and see what the coaches think about this.
Gus Malzahn fired at Auburn with a record of 68-35. What are your thoughts on that?
A long time ago, I'd like to know what you guys think. I formulated the opinion that the only programs that can win national championships in football have stadiums that seat at least 80,000 people. Because if you're less than that, you don't have enough of a fan base that cares. And if you're at 80,000 or plus, like Auburn is, like most in the SEC are, you have a fanatical fan base. And I mean an 80,000 seat stadium where they fill it, not like Rice or Stanford in the old days, but just a rabid fan base. And there is so much pressure on these coaches to succeed that it's almost impossible if you deliver a product that's anything less than, in Auburn's case, a national championship or competitive against Alabama, which means beating them at home occasionally, then you're not good enough. This is the same school that fired Gene Chizik 2 or 3 years after he won the national championship at Auburn. So
Right.
that's my 80,000 seat stadium. It used to be a 50,000 seat stadium bar for me, and if you look at the history of programs that have won the national championship, just look at the list. They all play in stadiums that seat, that many people, at least that many people.
Interesting. 68-35 record, playing the national championship game. His biggest sin is he's not Nick Saban. I thought
to be if he's anywhere else, then that's good enough. But not if you're in Alabama.
Question regarding comparing Kansas football today with Kansas State in the pre-Bill Snyder era.
It's a good one. Yeah, it's a good one because I got to Kansas City right at the beginning of Bill Snyder. We arrived in Kansas City the same year, so I was covering college sports, so I had to get familiar with what Kansas State had been through in the 70s and 80s. And first of all, they're two different worlds. But the spirit of the question is a good one. That Kansas State was absolutely non-competitive until for the decade or even more than that before Bill Snyder arrived, and Kansas has absolutely been non-competitive since basically firing Mark Mangino. I think it's more difficult for Kansas to gain competitiveness than it was for Kansas State in 1989. And I'll give you a couple of reasons. In 1989, the Big Eight was ruled by Nebraska and Colorado. Oklahoma was about to go on probation. Oklahoma State was about to go on probation for the Hartley-Dykes recruiting violations. And Iowa State was a bottom feeder. Kansas was a bottom feeder. K-State, Missouri was close to the bottom at that point too. That was they just the end of the Woody era and hired Bob Stoll. So Kansas State didn't have to climb over many programs to get if you just put some organization, some structure, some recruiting into your program, you were already ahead of 3 or 4 other programs in the Big Eight. For Kansas, I don't know who they're going to climb over and how easy that's going to be. I mean, Texas Tech, maybe TCU. I don't think so. Not with Gary Patterson there. West Virginia, they like their coach, Neil Brown. I just think it's going to be really, even if Kansas has the better quality of athlete, it's not going to be as easy to climb over those, even the programs that are just ahead of them in the league. Remember with Kansas State, they were beating Oklahoma like 4 or 5 years after
Right.
after Snyder arrived, and that's because Oklahoma had really killed themselves with probation. And that's Kansas ain't beating Texas or Oklahoma anytime soon.
Question on KU basketball. The Mizzou was supposed to play them this year at the beginning of the series. Was this the year to play them that we'd have had a real chance?
Oh man, can you imagine what? I
Yeah.
guess we have to say T-Mobile Center now. It's
Yeah.
not Sprint Center, but T-Mobile Center. What that would have been? It would have been this past Saturday too. I think, right? The 12th was the first game. Oh my gosh, how much fun would that have been? And great year for it, with Missouri's team being what it is, and Kansas actually being a little better than I thought Kansas was going to
Right.
be. With especially this Jalen Wilson guy who's been fantastic. Um, Total toss up game, total toss up. And look, they still have an opportunity to play in the NCAA tournament. I'd love to put the bug in the ear of a committee member to see if you can assign them the same region so they can meet maybe in a Sweet 16 or an Elite Eight if it comes down to that, somewhere in Indianapolis, because we're pretty sure the whole NCAA tournament is going to be played in and around Indianapolis this year. So yeah, don't lose hope that they couldn't play this year. They just might. But now it means the series is going to start, I guess, at Allen Fieldhouse next year and go alternate Lawrence, Columbia, and then go the final 2 years in Kansas City. I think that's how it's going to go now.
Timely question. What are the chances the Chiefs change their name in the next few years?
Boy, I'll tell you what. I don't think the name is going to change. I think the people in Kansas City who speak to this issue have a better sense of the magnitude of the issue than national pundits do. I've been listening to some of now that the Cleveland Indians are it's going to drop their name after the 21 season. They're going to go through next baseball season as the Indians, but then drop it after 21. And then you start hearing, oh, the Chiefs, the Braves, and the Chicago Blackhawks, they're next. I don't think that's necessarily true. Maybe they're next in terms of having to deal with the question, and they've never not dealt with the question. I don't think what happens in Cleveland or what happened in Cleveland forces the hand of the Chiefs. I think it just reinforces the belief that the team doesn't think that it's that by being named the Chiefs is an affront to Native American heritage, and that they actually have used the Chiefs name to help educate people on traditions and heritage of Native Americans, and they do it with a home game every year. Now, the big problem that I have is the chop. I've always had a problem with the chop. I think it's in addition to being offensive to some people, it's just unoriginal. It's totally unoriginal. Come up with something that Kansas City. Don't take Florida State's or the Atlanta Braves, gesture. Come up with something on your own, and that's kind of how I feel about it. The Chiefs are complicit in this. I've gone back. If you go to YouTube and type in Price Chopper and Chiefs, you'll find an ad where the Chiefs and Chopper ad where the Chiefs encouraged the tomahawk chop back in 90, 91, 92. And there's the players and the cheerleaders doing the chop, and all of a sudden, as the team's success increased under Marty and Carl, and the tailgating got so popular, and the tomahawk chop became part of all of that. And so the Chiefs have, anyway, they've said a lot of right things and done a lot of good things, I think, but they still play the music, the tomahawk chop music at the beginning of games. I think I don't think they should do that. I do. I think the Chiefs need to cut out that. And if the fans still want to do it, they can do it, but don't be encouraged to do it by the team.
Okay, we're trying to get everybody's questions. We have a lot. Each year, several top football players sit out teams' bowl games to prepare for the draft. Are you concerned we'll see more of that this year?
Yeah, I am, I can't blame them. We started seeing it about 3 or 4 years ago. Leonard Fournette was one of the first ones to do
Right.
it. I certainly don't blame any football player for doing it. And the risk getting an injury in a bowl game. My gosh, and that could possibly not only cost you. It costs you at the combine, right? It affects your combine, your scouting, and costs you draft spots and then money. I don't blame anybody. And I've had college coach after college coach tell me that if you're not playing for the national championship or if you're not in a high profile bowl game, this is a time to work your next year's team. The bowl prep, the less so the game, but the bowl prep is all about getting ready for next season. And if I'm an NFL prospect, I, you don't need me, and I don't need you anymore. So let's just have a mutual agreement that I'm going to sit this one out. And again, don't blame the athlete for doing that.
Should Ohio State be a part of the playoff given they've only played 5 games?
I'm okay with it. Where do you draw the line? Do you draw it at 4? I'm more ticked off at the Big Ten for the way the Big Ten and the Pac-12 handled the season to begin with, and not allowing the flexibility to schedule a non-conference game. The starting late, I guess, looks they wanted to be as sure as they could be about safety precautions and measures. Okay, but everybody had, and unlike the Pac-12, everybody in the Big Ten had there was no flexibility once games started getting canceled. For like Wisconsin early on lost a couple games in a row to COVID, and the opponents couldn't reschedule a non-conference game when there were plenty out there that wanted to play Big Ten teams. Nebraska famously wanted to schedule, in fact, had a game scheduled with Chattanooga after they lost their Wisconsin game, and the Big Ten said no. So that was just dumb on the part of the Big Ten. Um, I'm okay with Ohio State having played 6 games, half of the schedule for consideration for the college football playoff. It's at this point about the eye test. The committee keeps talking about the eye test, and to me, Ohio State passed the eye test, has so far.
A question I think I know the answer to, but I'm going to confirm with you about the Chiefs playoff seeding. My understanding is if the Chiefs split with the 2 NFC teams and beat the Chargers, then they'd end up 14-2. That would give them the tiebreak over Pittsburgh by virtue of the fact that Buffalo beat the Steelers and the Chiefs beat Buffalo. Is that correct?
That's right. If both teams finish 14-2, the Steelers and the Chiefs, and that scenario plays out where the Chiefs split with the Falcons or go 1-1 against Saints Falcons, but beat the Chargers, there's no way the Chiefs can't be the number 1 seed. So basically, the Chargers game makes it, by virtue of being an AFC opponent, the Chargers the most important opponent left for the Chiefs at home. And who knows what kind of state of mind the Chargers will be in. I imagine though their coach is on their way out. They've had a terribly underachieving season, and they ought to be able to take care of the Falcons as well. They're favored this weekend against New Orleans. Chiefs are a small favorite against New Orleans. So to be honest with you, I think the Chiefs are going to win all 3 of them, and it won't matter. But yeah, that's how it does play out. So 14-2, as long as one of those wins is against the Chargers, there's no way the Chiefs can't be the number 1 seed.
Okay. Question, what bowl game do you think Mizzou might be headed to? I saw one, I think it was Jerry Palm, maybe had him going to the Outback Bowl, but any other?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I saw that too. And once I saw that, I didn't look elsewhere because I got to tell you, Jerry Palm is the best at this. He spends more time when it comes to bowl projections and then NCAA tournament projections. Jerry Palm works as hard as anybody. I used to do this. I used to do bowl projections and NCAA tournament projections, and job changed the start, and I don't do those anymore. But Jerry Palm is the guy that when I was doing them, I would look and check my numbers and facts and figures against. And if we had something really different, I'd go, uh-oh, and I'd call him. And he would tell me what his rationale was, and it would make total sense, and I'd change mine. But yeah, I think we're looking at a New Year's Day bowl game for for Mizzou, and how cool is that going to be? That's what you play for. If you're not playing in the, if you're not playing in the college football playoff or one of the New Year's Six bowls, Florida with the SEC is where you want to be. Outback, Capital One, those games.
Two more questions and we'll let you go. Is Xavier Pinson a legitimate NBA prospect or should he come back for his senior season?
Well, I don't think he's an NBA prospect, but I think he's the player who has most benefited from this type of offense that that Conzo Martin is running this year. He is a player that you don't want to restrain. You want to let him go. And listen, nobody fills up a stat line like Pinson. I mean, he'll get you 3-pointers and he'll get you turnovers. He will not leave a zero on his stat line. But you take the bad with the good with him, and I like his engine a lot, and I think we're seeing it flower under this team this year. I love that he took the big shot the other night against Illinois, got the big bucket down the stretch, and that told me a little something about this team, that he's willing to do it, and maybe he's going to be the guy in those situations. So I think Missouri has several capable of being that guy, and I wouldn't be surprised if Drew Smith or Mark Smith or any of the others steps up and takes a big shot in a big situation. But the first time it happened this year, it was Pinson, and he made it, and that's no small thing. I don't think he's an NBA player, but I think he's going to have a heck of a season this year.
I definitely think he probably needed to improve his outside shooting
He did.
to get a chance. So
Yep.
Last question, any chance the Royals re-signing Trevor Rosenthal?
That's funny. I was just talking to Lynn Worthy, our Royals beat guy, today for a podcast that should be posted about now, and he didn't seem to think so. And we didn't get deep into it, but I think when they signed Greg Holland, they sort of made their choice on their bullpen, and they like where their bullpen is right now. And not only Holland with his his effectiveness, but his mentorship and leadership role in the bullpen with Barlow and Stallmont and Jesse Hahn and just a host of guys. I think they like where their bullpen is right now, as much as I like Trevor Rosenthal. What a revelation he was to the Royals last year, and he got it back, and he went and helped the Padres. And but I do not think he'll be a Royal, which means, of course, he'll end up being a Royal.
Yeah. Okay, Blair. For a guy who grew up in the Southeast, you are a walking encyclopedia of Kansas City area sports. In this day and age, I should say Wikipedia probably. But anyway, thank you. That was just great. You are really knowledgeable on all these. I don't know how you keep up with everything.
I appreciate you saying that, Mark. Appreciate it.
Blair Kerkhoff, Kansas City Star. This will be replayed on our YouTube channel in a day or two. So make sure you spread the word. We've been having some great results on our YouTube channel, and really want to get the word out about the Tiger Club. If you haven't joined as a member yet, please do go to our website at kctigerclub.com. Again, our guest today, Blair Kerkhoff, who I forgot to mention. I like to mention you are a member of the U.S. Basketball Writers Hall of Fame. We don't often get Hall of Famers on our weekly luncheons. So certainly I'm not in any Hall of Fame, so we like to have somebody represented. So thanks, Blair.
Appreciate it, Mark. Thanks, guys.
Folks, next week we'll have Ben Arnett, who's now the sports director at KOMU in Columbia, and also broadcaster on the Mizzou Network. Ben always has some good insight in Mizzou sports. In 2 weeks, we have Mike DeCourcy, who's a national basketball writer for the Sporting News. He's always a great guest, knows everything about college basketball around the country. And then on January 5th, we'll have Gabe DeArmond from Power Mizzou. So thanks to Paul Blackman, Barry Cantor, for continuing to line up outstanding guests in this pandemic. We've had a lot of fun with this, and we hope to see you next week. Everybody have a great week.